Well, good morning again. We're going to resume our training at this point. I do want to point out that our apologies are due to those folks who tuned in for the webcast. I understand that we were without sound for the first 10 or 12 minutes or so, and you will be able to see that sound or hear that sound in the archived version of the webcast because we did get it recorded. We're going to start our third session now with Sarah Pratt, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing Enforcement, and she's going to tell us how to inspect properties in some detail. And so, without further ado, here's Sarah.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm glad to see you all are back in the room and back watching on TV, that you didn't escape, and that you've actually come back to hear some of the details about this. I'm really happy to be here today. I over the years, did a lot of training on design and construction issues through a HUD-funded project called Fair Housing First. Fair Housing First is designed for builders, developers, code officials, and others. And it is specifically designed to provide training and technical assistance relating to the accessibility requirements of the Fair Housing Act. FairHousingFirst.org is a website, and it's listed in the resources at the end of your PowerPoint. As a resource, it is providing some training around the country now under a small contract with HUD, and it has a technical assistance component. The website has a lot of helpful information. For example, this baby that Kathy Pennington mentioned a little bit ago. This is the Fair Housing Design Manual. Now, this is the version that is bound. These are more scarce than hen's teeth at the moment. But you can go to Fair Housing First and link to a HUD website where you can actually download this and print it, or where you can read it online if you're being chintzy about your printing costs this month. And you can also link to it from the materials that were OGC distributed earlier. Now, it's recommended that you not simply download this and put it under your pillow and sleep with it under your pillow at night, because the absorption rate is pretty slow for putting it under your pillow and sleeping. But it is extremely useful if you've got a particular question, you're looking at a U-shaped kitchen, you're not sure what to do about it, what the requirements are, and you don't remember what we said here today. Now, I know that you think you're going to remember everything we said here today, but you will not. You will be out in the field, and you will kind of go, oh my gosh, what about X? What about Y? What about Z? And so having a copy of this in your case will be a handy reference guide if a question comes up. So you're at a property. What's the first thing you do? You determine what laws apply. You just listened to this presentation from the Office of General Counsel. The first question is, what laws are going to apply? Now, you've already heard that if you're dealing with experts and they say they know all about the ADA, you should run, not walk in the opposite direction. Because although the Americans with Disabilities Act does have applicability to all forms of housing, it is not the primo law that you deal with. So the first question that you should ask yourself with respect to a property is, when was it built? So the Fair Housing Act applies to properties built for first occupancy after what date? You guys are the experts, don't answer. See, I got two experts down here that they think they are going to know the answers to all my questions, but somebody else has to answer. March 13th, 1991. And that would apply to the whole property, or to, as mentioned earlier, an addition that might have been built after 1991 for first occupancy. So what does that mean? If it's a warehouse that was built in 1878 on a main street, waterfront, beautiful location, it's been bought up, completely renovated and turned into multifamily housing, covered by the Fair Housing Act or not? It is not covered by the Fair Housing Act because it was not built for first occupancy after March 13th, 1991, okay? So start with the principle of, was this property or some part of it built after March 13th of 1991 to determine if the Fair Housing Act applies. The second thing you think about for Fair Housing Act purposes is, Do I have buildings that have 4 or more units in them? 4 or more units in them. So if it happens to be a building design that has duplexes, 2 units, whole different building, 2 units, a whole different building, 2 units, Fair Housing Act is not going to apply. It is going to apply to units, dwelling units that are in buildings with 4 or more units in it. Third question, does this place have an elevator? 1 or more. Does not matter whether it is public, private, freight, or other. If it has an elevator that serves units in the building, then 100% of the units are covered. Okay? So you can have a building with 100 units, 500 units. It could be a high-rise, a mid-rise, even a low-rise that has an elevator providing access to units, then 100% of the units in the building are covered. On the other hand, if you have garden-style apartments, if you have 2 or 3 floors worth of units, then all ground floor units in those buildings with 4 or more units are covered. Okay so far? All right. Okay. And then one more thing, I'm going to say it here now, and then I can hit it again later if you need me to. If you have a multi-story townhouse design that has finished living space on 2 or more levels, so classic design, 4 steps, main entrance, primary entrance, you go in the front door, there's a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, maybe a powder room or a bath, deck in the back, steps going up to the 2nd, maybe even the 3rd, or even the 4th levels. In general, multi-story townhouses are not required by the Fair Housing Act to comply, but 2 big exceptions. One, if they are designed and constructed for a personal elevator, a private elevator, an internal elevator. So this is great. You know, they do these penthouses down on the beach. This is where I first saw them. They have 3 levels in some building, and it's designed to maximize beach views, right? So they have 3 levels of finished living space in one dwelling unit. But then people realize that folks do not want to walk up and down 3 flights of steps carrying their dirty laundry. So they put in, for these high-end properties, internal elevators, just for that unit. If you put in an internal elevator, then the entire unit has to comply. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase this, but essentially you've created an accessible route within the unit, and now it completely has to apply. So that's one exception to multi-story townhouses aren't covered. Here's the other exception to multi-story townhouses aren't covered by the Fair Housing Act, and that is this. And I've been in this property, so I'm going to visualize it and tell it to you. So you're at beachfront property, but it doesn't have to be beachfront, and you come to the property, and the parking level is on the bottom, I'll say, and there's an elevator there, and you get on the elevator and go upstairs, and you get to the hall, you get out the elevator, you come down the hall, go in one of those doors, and inside the door, or behind the door, is a townhouse. So you have a kitchen, dining room, living room, deck looking out over the beautiful ocean, powder room or bathroom, and a flight of steps going upstairs to 2 or 3 bedrooms and maybe another bathroom. In that setting, because you have an elevator accessible route to the unit, the primary entrance level of that unit has to comply with the Fair Housing Act requirements. Not the stuff up the steps, not the bedrooms, not the bathrooms upstairs, but the primary entrance level of that townhouse has to be accessible because you've created an accessible route to it, and but via an elevator, because you've done that, that part of the townhouse has to be accessible. So you've decided that the Fair Housing Act applies. You've got a property that was all of which was built after March 13th, 1991. It has some parts of the units that have at least 4 units in a building. You've decided if it's an elevator building, I'm going to have to look at the plans for each unit type in that building. So you're going to look at the 0 bedroom, you look at the 1 bedroom, you look at the 2 bedroom, you look at the 3 bedroom. All the unit types you're going to look at least one of. I'm not going to tell you too much more about how to do that particular scoping part, but I'm going to say you need to make sure that you look at least one of all the unit types. And then, and you figured out what the buildings are that you're going to have to look at and all of that. But before you start, you're going to think about what other laws apply. And that means finding out what? La, 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 la. So you're going to find out, is there federal financial assistance by all those programs involved in the property. Why do you do that? Because that's going to implicate whether Section 504 applies, and therefore the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, or UFAS. You're also going to find who's operating it, whether it's a state or local government or public entity. Because if one of those entities is operating the property, then ADA Title II applies. Luckily for us, the standards under UFAS, that is to say, the standards under Section 504 for accessibility and the standards under ADA Title II are pretty close to being like each other. There's a little tweaky, this, that, and the other difference, but basically they require a higher level of accessibility, right? So if UFAS applies, or if ADA Title II applies, what do you have to think about? There's going to be some units here that provide a higher level of accessibility than required by the Fair Housing Act. Who remembers what the percentage? At least 5% of the units, notice I say at least 5%, have to be accessible by UFAS or an ADA standard under ADA Title II, at least 5% for people with mobility impairments, and at least an additional 2% for units that are serving people with sensory impairments. So those are add-on requirements in addition to the Fair Housing Act. Have I covered it all? No, wait, the ADA requirements, the Americans with Disabilities requirements, Title III have some add-ons in housing. And that is because ADA Title III applies to housing that serves the general public. In your classic rental housing, the primary example of the part of the property that is covered by ADA Title III, regardless of anything else, regardless of when it was built or what laws apply, the rental office serves the general public and has to comply with ADA Title III, which includes new construction requirements, but also includes making changes to the rental office to make it accessible and usable by people with disabilities, if that's feasible, and then to make it accessible on demand. As I'll present a little bit later on, there are a couple of additional requirements for ADA Title III that require a little bit more accessibility than the Fair Housing Act does, and I'll talk about those when I get to them. Okay, so you've got question, when was all this built? And then you've got the question of which laws apply using the applicable dates for the other laws that you heard about earlier. So any one property, you get this, right? Any one property could be subject to the the Fair Housing Act for the entire property, to ADA Title III for the subparts of the property that serve the general public, and depending on funding or operator of the housing, either or both Section 504 and ADA Title II. Okay, so you got to know that going in before you do anything else. That means do a little research before you get there. Okay, so we had, let's see, we talked a little bit in the legal presentation about the key requirements for accessibility under the Fair Housing Act, and that's what I'm going to start with because that pretty much applies to all properties, federally funded or not, built after March 13th, 1991, of all different kinds of housing, including dormitories, nursing homes, transitional housing, and the more classically covered apartment buildings, condos, and co-ops. So we summarize these 7 basic requirements in the way demonstrated on this slide. First of all, there has to be an accessible building entrance on an accessible route for each covered unit. More about that in a minute. So every single unit that's covered, you've got to figure out what that is and make sure that that unit is on an accessible route. Second requirement is that there has to be accessible and usable public and common use areas throughout the property. Public and common use areas could include the rental office, but it's also going to include the common use laundry room, the dumpster, the swimming pool, the gazebo, and a bunch of other things, okay? Third requirement is that there's got to be usable doors. That is, that doors have to meet certain specifications depending on where they're located. They're different specifications, but I'll clue you in. This part of the requirement is pretty darn easy. Fourth requirement is, so you've come in, you've got to look for accessible routes. That's your first thing in doing a survey. The second is to look at the public and common use areas. The third is to check the doors, and that has gotten you now to the primary entrance door that goes into individual dwelling units. And again, you're going to look at all the different unit types that you have to examine that are represented in the property. Requirement 4 takes you inside the door and says there must be an excuse me, there must be an accessible route into and through every covered dwelling unit, in and out of every door designed for user passage, okay? Not through the door that's tiny and narrow because the only thing that's behind it is the water heater, but all the doors that are meant for user passage. That means if a bathroom has 2 doors, both must comply. In and out of every room, in and out of every bathroom, in and out of the kitchen, and out the back or side door to the patio or balcony. Okay, that accessible route requirement covers how you get around inside a covered unit. The 5th requirement has to do with environmental controls, putting light switches and thermostats and electrical outlets within designated reach ranges so they can be reached and accessed and used by somebody with a disability. The 6th requirement is pretty straight ahead. In all designated bathrooms and in one designated type of powder room, there must be reinforced walls for later installation of grab bars. So again, these units don't have grab bars hanging around everywhere that are visible. They have a little bit of room in the bathroom so that someone can come in and do and maneuver, but they do not have grab bars, but they have reinforcements in the walls. And I'll tell you how to inspect for that when we get to that part of the presentation. And the final requirement is that the kitchens and bathrooms be usable, and that is that they meet certain specifications for usability by people with disabilities. Every one of these requirements was not pulled out of thin air. They were pulled out because of the classic footprint of a typical wheelchair, classical usability by people who are in wheelchairs or have mobility impairments or short of stature or have limitations based on the fact that they have arthritis, heart disease, or whatever else it is. So that when you hear about a reach range, the reach range is designed to be that specification because of the limitations of a user or a likely pool of users. But I will also say that the Fair Housing Act requirements do not maximize accessibility. And you know, my office enforces the Fair Housing Act and Section 504 and ADA Title II and a bunch of other civil rights laws. And people come to us sometimes and say, well, this building is not usable by me. And we go in and we take a look, and the Fair Housing Act is the only law that applies, and in fact, that building is not usable by that person. Usually it's because someone who uses, who needs the access uses a different kind of wheelchair, maybe those Amigos that you see advertised on TV that you can get with free of charge, those really wide body babies. They kind of look like a cross between a wheelchair and a golf cart. And they're wider than the minimum, the requirements for doorways under the Fair Housing Act. So the Fair Housing Act is not considered to be the epitome of fully accessible living at all. In fact, Congress said it is supposed to require a modest level of accessibility, okay? So let's go through these requirements. I'm going to buzz through a bunch of them. I'm going to try to buzz through at least requirements 1 and 2 before lunch, and we'll come back and finish up at the end. Towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to pull out some of the areas where UFAS / the ADA Title II standards require higher level of accessibility in comparison to what the Fair Housing Act requires. So the first requirement is that every single unit that is supposed to be accessible has to have a building entrance on an accessible route unless it is impractical. And that impracticality is not like, oh, I don't feel like it today, or, oh, there's a little hill here, so it's impractical. There is a set of specifications to determine impracticality. And I will talk about that more later, but let me just say that someone who says, oh, it was too steep to do this, is going to be held to an extremely high standard to prove that they could not do it, okay? So the first question is, what is an accessible route? Well, an accessible route, the first thing you need to think about is it is how people with disabilities get around the property. So it has to meet certain specifications. The people with disabilities, whether they use crutches or a wheelchair or have limited mobility for some other reasons, it's a continuous pedestrian pathway with no steps, no abrupt changes in level, and no steep slopes. So briefly stated, the ANSI requirements for an accessible route are something like this. The accessible route must be at least 36 inches wide. And if you were designing from scratch, I'd say do 38 or 40 even. 36 inches is pretty narrow for many people using those wider Amigo kinds of things at this point. But 36 inches is the ANSI standard, at least. It must be of a firm, stable, non-slip surface. That is to say, an accessible route is not mulch, rubber chips, gravel, okay? Firm, stable, non-slip surface. An accessible route has a slope no greater than 1 in 20. What does that mean? For every 1 inch of rise, you have to have at least 20 inches of run. 1 inch of rise, 20 inches of run. You're going up 2 inches, you got to have 40 inches of run, right? That's a pretty darn gradual slope. That is what an accessible route has. And people say, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do that. But of course, when you're developing a property, what's the first thing you bring into the property after you go do your plans and stuff? Would that be the bulldozers? Part of the sensibilities of the people who looked at this code and the code people who've looked at accessibility, and part of the sensibilities of the courts who've looked at this is say, you know what? We know that all lots are bulldozed and dirt is moved around before property is constructed. So the idea is move the dirt around so you can create that gradual slope as part of the initial design of the site before you ever get to the construction. And that is a lack that some property developers have had. An accessible route also has very limited cross slopes, and the cross slopes that are allowed on an accessible route is essentially 2% or 1 in 50. That's a very gradual slope. And I tell you, when you're inspecting a property, here's what to look for. You're checking to see if there's an accessible route to every covered dwelling unit. Might be a little older property. The sidewalk has sunk, or tree roots have popped up, and all of a sudden the accessible route is interrupted because you have this huge gap in the sidewalk, right? Or you have an accessible route that just was never designed to be have that gradual slope in the first place. So those are the sorts of things that you look at. Some older properties also have extremely narrow sidewalks. 32 inches, 30 inches even, those are fully non-compliant. Okay, they are not compliant at all, and so you're looking at identifying that as a significant problem because they're either going to have to replace the accessible route to widen it, or they're going to have to do an add-on that actually works, that is to say, not just slap down some asphalt on the edges and call it a day. All right, so the accessible routes go from various places. And the first place it comes from is every pedestrian arrival area within the borders of the property. So pedestrian arrival area is the first one you always think about is the parking lot, because that's the typical, most common pedestrian arrival area, right? People drive in their car, they are drivers, then they get out of their car, they become pedestrians, right? So the pedestrian arrival point can be thought of as being the surface of the parking lot. But other pedestrian arrival points can include the street, even the street that is way the heck over there. Where the border of the property goes all the way to the public street, there must be an accessible route to a pedestrian arrival area that maybe is a bus stop down the street, okay? There also has to be an accessible route that connects every dwelling unit to the common use areas, okay, and to the site amenities. So that generally means an accessible pedestrian route between every unit and the pool or the laundromat or laundromats, the garbage dumpster, you notice I said. Okay, so you look at it from two perspectives. One is, how do you get to the unit from the pedestrian arrival areas? And then from the perspective of being at the unit, can you get from the unit to site amenities. There's a little bit of discussion about whether you have to be able to get to every site amenity. If you have 2 pools, maybe it's an accessible route to one of them. Note it. Somebody else will make a decision about that. But the common area in the mid-sized property is an accessible route to every amenity. Let me give you a hint about one that's missed all the time. I don't know how many properties I've seen. Mailbox kiosks, clustered mailboxes, you know, you go in, you drive in, there's clustered mailboxes, sometimes inside a building, sometimes in the great out of doors. I don't know how many times I've seen no accessible route to those mailbox kiosks. They're up a curb. They've carved them out of the side, the driveway. They put a curb around them, maybe a little grass, and there's absolutely no way for a person with a disability to get up that curb and actually reach the mailboxes. So that's a problem. The other thing is that there has to be an accessible route in those buildings where you have public and common use areas as part of the building. So I was on a property not too long ago, and my gosh, it was gorgeous. It was huge, and you know, it had the gym, and it had the media room, and the party room, and the this, and the that, and the other. There has to be an accessible route to all of those things. There's one big exception about accessible routes under the Fair Housing Act, and that is if you have 2 buildings next to each other, units over here, 6 or 8 or 10, units over here, 6 or 8 or 10, 2 separate buildings, you do not have to have an accessible route that connects those 2 buildings. In other words, you can say to the people, come out the door, go down the sidewalk, and then go around over here to get in some kind of maybe slightly longer route to get to the units in the next building over. HUD encourages there to be accessible routes there and even says you can sort of skimp on a couple of the standards if you do put it in to try to increase accessibility, but it's not required. All right, so let's talk about what accessible routes to site facilities look like. So here you've got a pedestrian arrival area in a parking lot. And what you've got are things that need to be able to be reached via an accessible route. Mailbox kiosks, separate laundry buildings, clubhouses, which are back there, and the pool area, managers' offices, recreational areas, and the disposals, the garbage dumpsters. So they all have to be on an accessible route so they can be reachable by somebody coming out of their unit and heading out to use the facilities just like anybody else would. All right, and so this is the example of the routes between buildings that both have covered units. In this case, there's not a requirement to make an accessible route between the building on the left and the building on the right. But this is the place where it'll tell you that if they do provide such an accessible route, you can provide a little bit steeper slope than 1 in 20. You can go to 1 in 12, which is typically thought of as a ramp, and you don't have to put in railings, okay? So this is actually a compliant example. You don't have to do an accessible route, and you'll see way back in the distance 3 or 4 steps because it's an accessible route that goes only between buildings. There are other accessible routes to get out to all the amenities. But if you were going to make it accessible, you could put a slightly steeper slope there to increase accessibility. So within a building, you have to have an accessible route that reaches in one single building, a mailroom, a clubhouse, a trash chute, common use trash chutes, observation decks, rooftop decks. This is often missed. So you got a high-rise or mid-rise, and somebody's put this great amenity of this beautiful garden terrace thing on the roof, and they forgot to run the elevator up there. They only run the elevator to the top floor of the units. Oops, they did not create an accessible route to this common use terraced garden, an amenity of the property that everybody would want to use. It's a layer of noncompliance. Swimming pools, fitness rooms, office centers, all the amenities that are offered today. I once saw a property that offered an amenity of a car wash on the property. And it was a public and common, it was an area meant for tenants and their guests, and they could bring their car up and wash their car. Very nice little amenity, right? Had to be accessible, had to comply with certain requirements. So what are the elements of an accessible route? Say if you're talking at starting at the parking lot, Access aisles is the first, usually, that you see if you're standing in the parking lot, and that's an access aisle to get from the parking lot to a curb cut to a sidewalk. And all of those elements have specifications. The access aisle has specifications, the curb ramp has specifications, the sidewalk has specifications. And if all of those have required slopes. If you have a steeper slope than 1 in 20, pretty much you are talking about a ramp, and that is part of an accessible route. But if something has a steeper slope than 1 in 20, and it's steeper, now all of a sudden you've got a little steeper slope, and it's more like this from 1 in 12, that's considered a ramp, and you're supposed to have handrails and edge protection at a minimum. Okay? So if you're looking at something that looks kind of steep, the question is, should it have been a ramp, and are there railings and edge protection along that? A typical way of measuring slope, by the way, is digital level, basically. You use the digital level at various points along the accessible route, and you measure both the running slope and the cross slope. So the running slope is 1 in 20 should be the maximum slope, unless it's treated like a ramp, in which it's 1 in 12, and the cross slope should be no more than 2%. Measure several places, because some of these ramps don't comply in certain parts, but they do in other parts. And after you do this for a while, you can eyeball it and kind of figure out where you should be measuring, because it looks a little steeper. But measure several places. Elevators are part of an accessible route, and so are elevated walkways. And here's a picture of a very nice elevated walkway where you have a site that has got kind of a falling away. It's kind of built on a hill. And what they've done is, in this situation, they have created a elevated walkway to reach the ground floor units in a building that does not have an elevator. And the level elevated walkways are an accessible route. You sometimes, in today's world, also see elevated routeways between a parking garage over here and then the streets in between that and the building, but they put crosswalks between the parking garage and different levels of the property. Should you see that, a clue, the pedestrian arrival points for that property are on each level of the parking garage, 1, 2, 3, 4, because they've created an accessible route to all of those different floors, and so there has to be an accessible route. Once they create it, the route has to be accessible, and all of the units on that route have to comply. I'll talk to anyone who has questions about that at the break. So some people come in and say, well, you know, we have a steep side, and what we really want to do is create a pedestrian route. A pedestrian route. I mean, not a pedestrian route. We can't do a pedestrian route. We would love to, but we can't do it. So they say, we just want to create a vehicular route, a route where people get in the car and drive to something else, rather than be able to move as a pedestrian. Well, let me just say that you better have a darn good rationale for that. And when you're talking to folks, you're out inspecting, and they say, well, the way you get from the dwelling unit up here to the swimming pool down at the bottom of the hill is you just have to get in your car and drive. No problem, right? Okay, so the real question behind that is, if you see that, note it and ask them what conditions created the need for a vehicular route. Those conditions must have been conditions beyond the control of the builder, developer, or owner, beyond their control, okay? Not that they might have cost a little bit more to design the property differently, but that it was completely beyond their control. So the kinds of things you think about being beyond the owner's control is natural or man-made physical barriers which they were not able to remove. Could be some requirement that there was wetlands or environmental impact requirements that said you could not regrade a particular part of the property because it was protected under environmental requirements. There could be legal restrictions such as setbacks that would prevented you from doing this, but someone who's going to look at it is going to look at it hard to see if there were an alternative way of doing it. So I would note that as a problem and let it get sorted out up here. Okay? In this sketch, for example, you've got the person who says, oh, well, they could just get in their car and drive from their unit in the building all the way around to get to the tennis court at the bottom of the hill. You see the topo map that's showing that's a steep hill there. And if you actually have to do a vehicular route, you have to provide accessible parking spaces at each end of the route, okay? So that somebody can actually park in the accessible space, then drive around and park again at an accessible space at the bottom. But I'll warn you right now, if you see that in a property, note it, because I've seen very few of those situations where it would actually be defensible to have provided a vehicular route as an alternative. All right, so what are we talking about when we're talking about an accessible route for the entrance? We've talked about where it starts: pedestrian arrival area, bus stop, street, passenger drop-off, parking lot. That's where the route starts, and it has to go to the entrance for all dwelling units. So what are we talking about here? We have different kinds of buildings. So we have buildings that have a bigger building that have common entrances. So at least one of them must have an accessible route going into the building. Clue: if the route that someone has chosen to be the accessible route is all the way the heck around the back next to the dumpster and the garbage place and the loading dock, write it down. Because although it just says, the standard says at least accessible entrance to one covered entrance, I will tell you that someone with a disability is required to go a much longer distance and through unpleasant environmental settings to get to their accessible route. Also has a case under the Fair Housing Act, whether it's for design and construction violations or for just plain old unequal treatment, being relegated to the back door. Okay, you also have buildings with separate covered entrances, so you have a lot of these around in the sort of classic garden-style apartment. Every unit has their own entrance, their own little stoop, their own little this, that, and the other. And so there must be an accessible route to each dwelling unit that's covered. In a 3-story building with, might have 40 units in it, all of the ground floor units are covered, you'll remember, so that there has to be an accessible route to each one. I once visited a brand new property, and you went down the sidewalk, and at the end of the sidewalk, you went down 2 steps, and then you got to a little stoop that served 2 adjacent units, and the property said that they had to do it that way because of the slope of the ground. They lost that argument in court and had to pay a ton of money because the idea was they could have regraded, they could have done switchbacks, they could have really, the site needed to have been designed differently in the first place. And if they designed the site differently in the first place, they could have complied. That was the folks that tried to argue that the accessible entrance could be the back door of the unit. In other words, this was a flat unit, 2 steps to the front door. Out the back, there was a classic sliders with patio, and they wanted to argue that the accessible entrance could be the back door. After the judge finished laughing, he ruled against them. Okay? So you also have settings where you have buildings with multiple entrances. And sometimes, this isn't seen that much these days, but you could have a big building, and there's a cluster of units down here, and they're served by an entrance here. There's a cluster all in one building served by an entrance here, and maybe another cluster over here served by a different entrance. In those cases, at least the entrance that serves, at least one entrance that serves each cluster of units has to comply. And then buildings with elevators, of course, have to have at least one accessible entrance as well. People ask about breezeway buildings. This is a situation where you have, see it a lot, actually. I used to see it mostly in southern climates. Now I see it all over the place, where there's some units on one side, some units on the other, and through the building is a breezeway. In this case, it's essentially thought of as one building, okay? And I'll just mention, I had an argument one time where 3 units were on one side of the breezeway, 3 units were on the other side, and they tried to claim that they were not covered by the Fair Housing Act because they had 2 buildings, each of one of which had 3 units. They lost that argument too, rather badly, rather painfully, because those 2 parts of the building are connected structurally, aren't they? They're connected by foundation usually. They're connected often by roofs, although not always. Sometimes there's other structural elements, including stairways, that connect them. HUD's interpretation is that that's considered to be as one building, and each breezeway entrance has to be accessible to the extent that it's serving a group of units. So if this breezeway were serving all 4 of the ground floor units. Again, no elevator in this building, only ground floor units required to be accessible. All 4 doors to the units were on the breezeway. Then there has to be at least one accessible route to the Breezeway. In this case, they've nicely designed it so that there's 2 accessible routes into the Breezeway, which is a better design concept if you can do it. Maximizes opportunities for people with disabilities. Here's an example with individual entrances. In this building, all of the ground floor units have to be accessible. Each unit has its own entrance. Each unit has to be on an accessible route, and you can kind of see where the accessible route is from the accessible parking, which would be the pedestrian arrival point, all into the various entrances of the building. This is an interesting design. Imagine, if you will, the level at the street level has on the top, what it has is a Panera, a Starbucks, and a Borders. Oh, Barnes & Noble, okay? That's the commercial retail on the ground level, or what we would generally describe as being the ground level. However, for Fair Housing Act purposes, ground level is defined as the bottom level of units. So in this case, the ground floor of the housing, which is located above retail, that level has to be on an accessible route. Now, because the shops are going to be covered by ADA, and therefore they have to be on an accessible route too, your first level of ground floor units are going to have to be, you're going to have to figure out a way to provide access to them to create the required accessible route. How would you do that? Monster ramp. It would start over here, it would circle around the building 3 times to get the slope right, and then come into the ground floor level. Not so much. You could also conceivably put parking across the street and do the level elevated ramp, a walkway between the parking garage. But if you didn't have parking garages in your plans, what you're probably going to have to do is what's sketched out in the bottom picture. You may, under the Fair Housing Act, be required to install an elevator to reach the ground floor units to create that accessible route. And the bottom picture is a similar concept in a different design. The bottom picture has parking underneath. So the sort of entry-level, street-level area is parking. But there has to be an accessible route to the units above them, assuming these units above them are ground floor units. So in this picture, they've designed a picture of an elevator that would go from the parking level to the first level, which is called the ground floor level of units. Everybody okay with me on this? Now I'll ask you a harder question. What happens if you extend the elevator that currently just goes from the parking to the first level of ground floor units, and you've decided you're putting in an elevator anyway, and you put it up to the 3rd floor? What happens? Every unit in the building now has to be accessible, okay? And a lot of developers will do that, because if you're putting in an elevator for 2 floors, why not put it in for 3? Providing the combination of elevators and steps is kind of weird. Get off the elevator, walk down to the end of the hall, go up a flight of steps. But once they do that, the upper level of dwelling units also have to be covered. Everybody still awake? That's good. All right, so what do you do about the unusual site terrain? This is Hawaii. I would be happy to advise on any property located in Hawaii. Just let me know. West Virginia, sometimes in some communities, really very hilly communities, even places like Pittsburgh or even DC, there's limited site availability, and the sites that are available now for relatively new development are steep in slope. And there's 2 kinds, really. One is the kind of steep of slope, and one is where you're building in a floodplain or at the beach on waterfront. So for purposes of this training, I'm not going to go into the tests for site impracticality. Here's what I'm going to tell you about site impracticality. 1, so far, it's a defense in a fair housing case that the site was so rocky and hilly that it couldn't comply with the Fair Housing Act requirements. And 2, nobody has won it yet. No one has won a case on a defense, to my knowledge. What happens in the courts where this has been raised, they say kind of 2 things. One is the official test, which requires 3 steps, should be run by a civil engineer or someone who really knows what they're doing, and it should be done before you do the site even, not just before you construct, but as part of the site design for the property. And so far, everyone who's claimed this has not done that, and the courts have kind of laughed them out of court on this issue. And my friends down here are nodding because they've seen it in properties, right? So that's one thing about site impracticality. And the other thing a court said while it was laughing was they brought in the bulldozers. They created site impracticality by constructing. They took all the dirt and terraced over here for the properties, and then they took all that dirt and created berms over here, and now they have hills, and now they're trying to claim they couldn't have made an accessible route there. And once again, after the judge stops laughing, the judge finds liability. Okay. So there are two different tests for site impracticality, one for individual buildings and one for the site. I will just tell you this. If you have a building with an elevator, do not even bother thinking about site impracticality, because if the building has an elevator, it has to comply and all units have to comply. So if they're on a high, steep hill and the building has an elevator, don't care that it's a high, steep hill with rocks jutting out from the foyer. It's got to comply. So that's one thing. And the second is, if you have one building that's not for elevators and it only has one common entrance, you basically do not have to comply at all if you apply the individual building test and the site is impractical. So elevator buildings, all units have to comply, even on a hilly, steep, rocky slope. And if you've got one building, you might not have to make any units comply. Otherwise, application of the two tests that I just mentioned, which, you pull out the regs, you go through a complicated evaluation. You're not going to do that as an on-site inspector. You're going to look at the property. You're going to look to see if there are accessible routes. If there's no matter how steep the thing is, if it's an elevator building, you're going to say it has to comply, and anything else you're going to document and send it up for further inquiry. That's what I got to tell you about that. You might ask them if they have a civil engineer report on the site, and that would be interesting to know about, because if they didn't, my assessment at this point is they're going to lose. You also have site impracticality due to unusual characteristics, and this is post-Katrina rebuild. This is lakefront or oceanfront property. For this kind of site, there is a requirement where you measure certain things and determine what the difference is between the finished grade elevation and the pedestrian arrival point. And the planned entrance, see where the planned entrance is on this little schematic? The planned entrance really should be no higher than the minimum building code standard for building in that floodplain or that location. So some people will try to jack up the properties higher. They'll put them on higher stilts or do something to get them above flood level. But for purposes of applying this test, you'll look at the planned entrance level, you look at the pedestrian arrival area, you see what the slope is and what the distance is, and you would have had to make a ramp like this to make it accessible, you don't have to do it. Okay? So again, this is take the design manual or the code standards. If you see this, someone will do that if you see that issue. And the bottom line is, if you see this kind of property and you think the slope seems too steep or it doesn't seem to be accessible at all, document and send it forward. So requirement 2 goes from the pedestrian routeways, which you've now looked at the routeways, the accessible routes all around the property. You've looked at it to each unit. You've looked to make sure that there's an accessible route from the units to the amenities. And now we get to the question about accessible and usable public and common use areas. In general, these requirements require high levels of accessibility because they're in the places where everybody's going to use them. And in many instances, these requirements for accessibility are pretty much consistent with what UFAS or the ADA standards would require. And so you can expect in the public and common use areas, whether it's the clubhouse, the changing rooms for the swimming pool, the laundry area, and similar areas, that there's going to be a higher level of accessibility required. And I'm going to hit some of the high points with you now. ANSI has a chart, a one-page chart, for helpful reference point on this issue if you want to look at it. So let's talk first about parking, because that is an amenity for both residents and for the public visiting the property. So for residents, you count the parking spaces serving the covered units. How the heck do you do that? Well, it's easy in a building that has an elevator, because what happens is there's 100 units, say, in the building, and local code says you have to provide 2 parking spaces for every unit, or whatever the local code says. So assume 100 units, 200 parking spaces, because that's what your local code says for parking. So in that building, only 2% of the parking spaces that are serving those units have to be accessible. So you have, give me that back. Oh, he's going to take off the label. Isn't that great? Okay, so only 2% of the 200 parking spaces have to comply. So how many is that? 2% of 200? Big 4 accessible units. So some of these places, you're going to get there and go, they only have this many? Well, 4% is required for residents. Okay? Thank you, my dear. And add on to that, for every amenity, like a pool or a clubhouse, where you also have parking. Now, you don't have to provide parking, but if you provide parking there should be an accessible space at each one of those places. And that's, remember the vehicular route thing? That's so somebody could actually get in their car and drive from their unit or from their parking space to the tennis court, the swimming pool, or whatever it is, and park there and get out. So that's all that's required for residents, not a high number of spaces. You may see more. A smart designer designs for more. I've trained many an audience that I say, if you stick with the minimums in the Fair Housing Act, you're whacked. Maybe I didn't say whacked, but something like that. Because, and especially in a lot of these properties, our residents, they're growing older. There are people with disabilities in many of these properties, in reality and in terms of potential. We're an aging crowd, you know. Ask yourself if your knees will be working the same way in 20 years as they are today. And the answer for all of us is no, they won't. So, you know, I tell designers to design for more than the minimums, but 2% of the units for the covered parking space, covered dwelling units is all that's required. And if for visitor parking, if you provide visitor parking, it just says a sufficient number of spaces to provide access around the property. Now, what does that mean? Well, there's no particular standard, but I will tell you 2 things about this. One, more is better, because if you have a new resident that needs an accessible parking spaces, if you put some extra ones in for visitor parking, it's a lot easier to have them use a visitor parking space and designate something else as a visitor parking someplace else. And 2, be sure you look around when you're looking at these accessible parking spaces and make sure there is a curb ramp near them. I got a whole series of slides where the handicap accessible parking space is down here and the curb ramp is way the heck down here at the other end of the lot. What a bad idea that is. We cite that as a violation when we see it. Seen it before? People are nodding. I've seen that. Yeah. There's not an accessible route from the accessible parking place to the sidewalk, and therefore not an accessible route to the unit, and that's how you cite that. Okay? There also has to be at least 1 accessible parking space at the sales or rental office. I will tell you that pre-construction, should you happen to be inspecting a pre-construction site, this is a word to the wise. If you're looking at a pre-construction site, what do people often do at a pre-construction site? They bring in a trailer, they build a model unit, right? They do all of that stuff. The accessible parking needs to be provided at that area too if it's serving the public under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Even though you don't have any units constructed yet, the fact that you're serving the public, you're taking apps, whatever you're doing, at some location like a trailer or a model unit, that has to be accessible as well under the ADA because it's serving the public. And I will tell you, while I'm unscrewing the top on my unnamed soft drink, here's the case. A husband and wife, Pat and Patricia, wanted to buy a house, a single-family house now, in a new development in Texas. And so they were building a new subdivision, and the developer was developing single-family houses. And so you would immediately say, Fair Housing Act, forget about that, right? Because the Fair Housing Act doesn't apply to detached single-family houses. But the developer of this subdivision built a model unit right at the front entrance, which is what they always do, and they put inside that model house, on the first floor, a desk and an office for their agents. And on weekends, they held open houses, and all the people in the towns came driving out to go visit the location, think about if they wanted to order themselves up a house. And they would go in the house and meet with the agent, look at the plans and the designs, and sign the official contracts and all of that junk. So Pat and Patricia was in a wheelchair, and they called up, is this place accessible? Oh, yes, indeed it is. Yes, indeed. Okay. So fine, they drive out and they look at the subdivision. When they get to the house, they learn that the house is in fact not accessible at all. In fact, it looks like a house. That is to say, there's a driveway, and then there's 3 steps up to a little sidewalk, and then you turn, and then there's 4 steps up to a stoop, and then there's a big old step up to the front door. And Pat and Patricia was like, okay, well, we're already out here, honey. Hike me up. And the agent and her husband hiked her up the steps. They went in. They looked at the ground floor of the unit. They talked to the agent. And as they were coming out, somebody dropped her and down those steps, and she fell off out of her wheelchair and broke her hip, and she brought a lawsuit. She was injured as a result of this single-family house. You know what the court said? What do you think the court said? Fair Housing Act did not apply. What? Can you think of any law that might have applied? ADA Title III. This was a place that served the public. There was a sales office in that house. Okay? And so, although that's kind of an oddity in the history, I always tell folks when I'm training folks that are builders or developers, if you're serving the public on the property while you're getting to construction, then that place where you do your sales or rental operations has to comply, even if it's really only the temporary place. Interesting case, important case from the ADA point of view. All right, so that's the accessible parking space, fairly minimal requirements. Also, if the property provides other kinds of parking, sometimes places will provide different kinds of housing. They will have carports, they will have garages. Sometimes they cluster them, sometimes they make special ones you can just rent. In general, at least one of each type of parking has to be accessible, okay? So at least one carport, one covered garage, one parking area, like a parking garage that's within a building. At least one of each type has to be accessible. Okay, what is an accessible parking spot? Here's your picture. It is permissible to share an access aisle. So now you're back to your pedestrian arrival area and you're checking the common use areas, you're looking at parking. So actually the rationale for sharing the access aisle is that one car could back in. I mean, if it was both the drivers that were using, that had a disability and using a chair, one car could come in front ways, the other car could back in, and the driver would still be on the side with the access aisle. The access aisle has to be at least 5 feet wide. It should be striped and appropriately marked. And in general, the curb ramp should be at the end of the access aisle, possibly other places too, but certainly at the end of the access aisle to provide free access to the sidewalk. The parking space must be at least 8 feet wide for the Fair Housing Act requirements. I'll tell you now, just a little highlight for the slide that's coming up later. If this is the accessible parking space at a rental office or other place that serves the general public, at least one of these spaces must be accessible to people using a van. This must be a van accessible space. What is the difference, you say? Inquiring minds want to know. In a van accessible space, the crosshatched access aisle has to also be 8 feet wide. So if you see one of these parking spaces, or 2 of these parking spaces, and they have the extra wide access aisle, that is ADA compliant. And ADA Title III would apply to those rental offices in any other part of the property that serves the general public. There are also height requirements in covered parking, like underground parking garages and those kinds of places for van accessible parking that would have to be covered if that parking serves a rental office or other place serves the general public. So again, in the public and common use areas, there are higher level of accessibility required, and so in the public or common use toilet rooms, you have to have grab bars. The stalls have to meet certain requirements. The toilets Midline of the toilet must be a specified distance away from the side wall. The reason for that, people go nuts over this. Oh, the toilet's in the wrong place. Who cares where the toilet is? And the reason why is because the person with disability transferring onto the toilet can only get their best leverage if the grab bar is at a specific place. And if the wall is too far out here and the grab bar is over here, the person can't get the leverage, and it increases the chance that someone will fall and hurt themselves. There's a reason for these dimensions. So for sinks in public and common use areas, you have to have a forward approach. That is to say, you have to pull up under the sink. The sink counter has to be at a particular height. There has to be protection on the pipe underneath the sink so that people without sensation in their lower part of their body will not be burned accidentally in using the toilet. You will notice that the mirror in this bathroom goes all the way down so that somebody in a wheelchair can actually see themselves in a mirror. Always good. You can see that maybe you can see that in the faucets, there's lever hardware. On the door, there's lever hardware. You can even see that the towel dispenser and soap dispenser are within appropriate reach ranges. Okay, all of those are required for the fully accessible bathroom in public and common use areas. There also have to be accessible routes to recreational facilities. This is a pretty design of a walkway that serves as a sort of a bridge to provide an accessible route to the tennis court. When you have tennis courts, playgrounds, swimming pools, again, this slide indicates that there's a dispute in interpretation about this, and it may be possible that only one of those recreational amenities has to be on an accessible route. It is one of each type. So if you've got one pool that's the lap pool and another pool that's the kid pool, there has to be accessible route to both of them because they are different types of pools, okay? But if you've got 4 tennis courts, you have to have an accessible route that reaches one of them, okay? And in general, we would say design to make everything accessible. Why wouldn't you if you can? But surely to be an identified problem if there's not an accessible route to these kinds of amenities. Here's the pool. Notice there is no Hoyer lift. Notice there is no ramp into the pool. For Fair Housing Act compliance, you have to have an accessible route to the deck of the pool, to the side, to the edge of the pool, the concrete surrounding it. You do not have to have an accessible route into the pool. You do not have to have a lift. Sometimes that issue comes up in other kinds of properties, but in Fair Housing Act only covered properties, that's all you have to do. And don't forget that when you've got the accessible route and you're checking the accessible route to the pool, to check out the gate. Because the gate, you know, they put fences around pools for perfectly good reasons, right? But you got a gate in there. So the gates must comply with ANSI, and that means that the gate cannot be opened by someone grasping it, pinching it, twisting it, or turning it. So you don't use knobs. You can use lever hardware, which can be worked with a closed fist, up and down. You could use a key card, I think, but you can't use something that has a knob in it. So these security things come up sometimes. People say, oh, it's got to be like this for security purposes. Fair Housing Act, there can be Fair Housing Act compliant gates that lock and that prevent access from toddlers or from young kids that are unsupervised, but which also meet Fair Housing Act compliance. So look at the gate, not just at the route. If there's recreational areas, in this case, there's a craft area that's provided as part of the property. There's requirements there for a working height, and this is also true of business centers, to have a location that is high enough up so that someone with a wheelchair can pull under it. And sometimes those craft or business center offices are all very low down, and you could barely get your knees under it, much less somebody in a wheelchair that has armrests sticking out. Those have to be elevated high enough so that someone in a wheelchair can make a forward approach under them. Accessible drinking fountains. Some properties have drinking fountains. Certainly they have them inside. Certainly they have them occasionally on outside areas near playgrounds. At least 50% of those water fountains have to meet the ANSI specifications for water fountains. For common use laundry facilities, they have to be on an accessible route. For Fair Housing Act purposes, you do not have to have front-loading washing machines. Parentheses, you'll see at the end, for you, FAST, you do. So if there's federal financial assistance, Section 504 ADA Title II applies, you have to have front-loading washers and dryers. They're better, they're easier to use, and I'll just say, if you've ever been pregnant or had a bad back and you've tried to lift wet clothes out of a top-loading washing machine, you'll know that you got to reach down, pull up, swing around. Hard for people with mobility impairments to do. So front-loading is better. Fair Housing Act does not require front-loading. They require that you provide space so that someone in a wheelchair can pull up to the washer and use it. And the compromise there was provide reachers so somebody can use a little grabber thing and reach in and pull out the laundry. It doesn't work very well. If you have a choice in a property, go for front-loading. Accessible mailboxes, that's also typically in a common use area. The U.S. Postal Service has its own regulations and its own requirements, and they're a pain in our neck. So I'll just say that we say that we would encourage all mailboxes to be put within reach ranges, which in general for a forward approach is no higher than 48 inches and no lower than 15 inches. Now, the Postal Service has a whole different set of criteria for post office boxes, and that relates to the bad backs of the Postal Service employees that put mail in slots from the back. Okay, so they have different specifications. So I would just say, however, you should look at this and you should measure it. And if you have a building that has 100% of the units covered, like with an elevator, all mailboxes should be within reach ranges. Should be. Okay? Sometimes in ground floor units, where you've got a building that's got ground floor units, not every mailbox necessarily has to be in reach range, but a good selection of them need to be within reach ranges. And for the people who tear their hair out of this or are looking for a retrofit to this problem, installation of a separate bank of clustered mailboxes within reach ranges that could be assigned to individuals who needed the mailboxes within reach range is a possible retrofit approach. But again, you shouldn't just clear that if you're doing the inspection. You should note the problem, check the reach ranges, and bring it back up for further work. HUD is actively engaged in discussing this issue with various standard setters right at the moment. So I've mentioned dumpsters a few times. This is actually an example of a best practice. Here's what they did. So there has to be an accessible route to the dumpsters from every covered dwelling unit. Now, so if you've got one of those properties that has 4 or 5 dumpsters and they're all served at different parts of the property, there has to be accessible route to the dumpsters. And we say all dumpsters. And that accessible route means no steep slopes, no little grates in the driveway where somebody's tooling along with their garbage and falls into the hole, no elevated manhole covers, right? And if there's a fence around the dumpster, as many properties do, the gate should meet ANSI standards, which means no pinching or twisting, lever kind of hardware, right? In this one, there is not a specification under the Fair Housing Act for actually being able to reach the darn dumpster, okay? So what do we have with dumpsters? They're 8 feet up, and they got these heavy deals on the top, and none of us function well with those babies. I'm just saying, we don't. So in this case, this is the best practice. This developer, when they were installing the dumpsters, they dug a hole in the ground and lined it with concrete, just big enough for the dumpster, and stuck the dumpster down in there. So it's actually reachable by, 10-year-olds whose mom had sent them out with the garbage, and somebody in a wheelchair, and somebody who has a broken arm, and all the rest of us as well. But in general, the dumpsters themselves do not have to be accessible. The route to the dumpster has to be accessible, including the gate. Somebody, who can give me a time check, Dave? How are we?
6 minutes.
Okay, we're doing great, man. Okay, everybody appears to still be awake, which is also good, although I don't see, you guys who are out there in TV land, I can't really see you. So if you just wave your hands if you're awake, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go through the specifications regarding doors, and then we're going to take a break. So on doors, there are really 2 basic kinds of requirements for doors, and they're pretty straight ahead. One is doors in the area that are public and common use areas, okay? This is the part that serves the public, or the part that serves all the residents and the residents' guests. In those doors, they must be fully accessible, They must meet all the specifications of ANSI, just like they would have to meet all the for UFAS or the ADA standards. And the key parts of this is how wide the clear opening of the door is. Are there maneuvering clearances? What do the thresholds look like? What do the hardware on the door look like? And how hard do you have to pull or push to get them open? So the features of all doors in public and common use areas that serve the residents or their guests is, first of all, the doors in common areas must provide a minimum of a 32-inch clear opening. Here's how you measure it. You open the door to 90 degrees. 90 degrees, not this, 90 degrees. You measure from the face of the door over here to the door stop on the other side. And that dimension must be at least 32 inches. Okay? That's how you measure that door, at least 32 inches. All doors that serve tenants and their guests have to have hardware that does not require pinching or twisting. That is basically lever hardware. You can also have a push bar from access from the inside, but the problem is those doors that have push bars from the inside often are not usable from people who are trying to get through the door from the outside, because on the outside they have a handle, and the handle may not be usable. And interior doors cannot require more than 5 pounds of force to operate. And if it requires more than that, it should be automatic, which means automatic door openers, or you can have power assist for doors. Power assist for doors are, by the way, a particularly nice best practice for properties that serve seniors or people with disabilities. A power assist basically means you pull it a little bit, and then the power assist kicks in, and the door opens much more easily. Very nice also for use on doors exiting and entering into the out of doors, where you need a heavy door to meet fire code standards or wind control standards, but you also want your residents to be able to come in and out of them without getting stuck outside. And if you've ever seen someone sitting in a wheelchair waiting around for someone to come open the door because the door requires more than, I think the exterior door is 15 pounds of force, is that right? So because they cannot get the door open, you begin to understand how much a too heavy door is for how much it is a barrier to access. So automatic doors or power assist doors, even on exterior doors where you have to have 15 pounds of force as your standard, are also extremely helpful. For doors that are covered by the public and common use areas, there has to be maneuvering space specifications, and these are in ANSI, but you'll see that where the maneuvering space is different in different places depending on how the door opens and closes and by how someone approaches it. And so bottom line is this is to allow someone in a wheelchair to maneuver up close to the door, in their chair, reach their hand up, grab whatever it is it's going to grab, and either push or pull depending on what they have to do. Again, these dimensions are set because they are what is necessary for someone in a standard size wheelchair to be able to get to the door and use it. And there's an example. There's a door, not very well designed door, but there's where the maneuvering space is at the side of that door that goes straight in, 18 inches of maneuvering space. So someone in a wheelchair can approach the door, kind of pull over into the maneuvering space, grab the door, and open it. I'll tell you a story, since I maybe have 3 more minutes, and that is there was a property that didn't comply, and they had a disabled residence. They didn't have enough maneuvering space at the door to the unit, and the resident was having trouble getting to her unit because they had a tiny little stoop, and she was in a wheelchair, and so she would go up to the stoop, and she would try to maneuver around to get to the door to pull it open, and the stoop was so small that one day she just backed over the edge and fell off. And so these are the kinds of errors that lead not just to non-compliance, but to actually hurting people in big, bad ways. And of course there was a major lawsuit over this because now she was badly injured, and she had brought the issue to the attention of the property several times. So here's where the hardware looks like. This, I will say, public and common use access extends from things like laundries and clubhouses and bathrooms in clubhouses and swimming pool changing rooms to the primary entrance of the unit. So on the outside of the primary entrance door to every covered unit, there must be accessible hardware, and that is lever hardware, because that door facing out is part of the public and common use area. That's where the FedEx people come and the Girl Scout cookie sellers and the blah, blah, blah. Now, I will say, I've seen some, well, I'll use the word kindly, idiots, who design a dwelling unit and they put lever hardware on the outside of the door, very nice, and on the inside they put a knob. And I'm like, okay, how does that make sense? I mean, they had to think about doing it wrong that way. Now, you do not have to have lever hardware on the inside of the front door, just on the outside, but how stupid can you get? Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, so now you've done all the common use doors, and now you've gotten to a unit. When you get to the unit, you come through the door, and now you're looking at the doors in the unit. The doors inside the unit do not have to have the 32-inch clear opening. They have to have something that is called a nominal 32-inch opening, which is a minimum of 31 5/8 inches. This extraordinary result is due to the fact that there were some arguments when this was happening about what kind of doors you could get to put in units. And someone said, if I buy a pre-hung door at Lowe's, now, there are properties that are built with pre-hung doors that they buy at Lowe's, probably, okay? And it's a 34-inch door, and I put the door at 90 inches and measure the clear opening, it's not gonna be 32 inches, it's gonna be a little bit less. So they argued we should be able to use pre-hung doors from Lowe's in construction of properties, and that they should be able to be successful in the 31 5/8 inch clear opening, and they were successful in that argument. But anything lower than 31 5/8 inches is absolutely not a technical violation. It is a real serious one. We'd like to see all the doors with at least a clear opening of 32 inches. That's best practice. Minimum for compliance is 31 5/8. Measure carefully. And I'll just mention that this covers different kinds of doors, like the door that opens and closes, bifold doors, and sliding doors. So if you got sliding doors into a closet that is designed for someone to go in. Now, you have shallow closets, those doors don't have to comply. But the walk-in closets that we now see in all these properties, those doors have to comply because you're going inside of them to do something. Okay? So what's not covered? Doors to water heaters or furnaces. What is covered? In a unit, all the other doors meant for someone to go inside, including doors to closets that are walk-in and doors to storage units that are included as part of the unit. And there's your nominal opening. And don't forget that you have to have an accessible door and threshold going out the unit to the patio or the door. And this door requires a nominal 32-inch opening in a slider, and they don't come like that often from the factory. So this is a product issue. Measure the doorway. This is an item of serious noncompliance all over the place because by the time you open the door, there's a stopper, there's a this, there's a that. Even in a 60-inch slider, you often do not find the 32-inch or the nominal 32-inch clear opening. That's a matter of examination, matter of measurement, and it's also, at the beginning, a matter of product choice. How am I doing? I think it's lunchtime.
Well, I'm sure Sarah's worked up an appetite, if not everyone else. So we're going to break now until 1 o'clock, and we'll be starting our broadcast again at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight. Thank you.